So, getting to know Henri and hear his story and view his photographs has led me on an incredible journey. I humbly appreciate being able to partner with this Holocaust survivor and talented photographer who always looked up and always looked ahead. Such a great lesson in life. Program information is posted on our website, so you can view our upcoming program during the exhibition, which runs through December 30th. And after today's program, please fill out those surveys that you found on your seat, because we really do value your feedback. We want to know how your experience has been when you're here. As well, after the Q&A, that we'll be bringing in a desk so Henri can sign the postcards and the posters if you would like him to autograph them, and you can purchase them from the gift shop to take home. Barbara Griffin will be interviewing Henri today. Barbara is a creative director, producer, and photo editor. She was recently named President Emerita after 8 years of leadership at Atlanta Celebrates Photography.
A big shot.
Formerly, she was a senior vice president of image management for Turner Broadcasting System Incorporated, and she was responsible for all photography created globally for Turner's networks. Please join me in welcoming Henri Dauman, being interviewed by Barbara Griffin.
Good.
Thank you so much for being here and having us. I have to confess, this is, for someone whose whole life has been about photography, this is a fangirl moment for me. I'm as excited to interview Henri as my 15-year-old niece would be to interview Taylor Swift. So that's where I'm coming from. First of all, I know everybody's seen the exhibition, but a little bit about you. Here is someone who created some of the most iconic photographs of the 20th century during what were truly the glory days of photojournalism, working for Life, for Time, for Paris Match, and I'll probably say this wrong, but the Journal France Amérique.
Jour de France, yes.
What he said. And many other European publications. It's amazing. As a former magazine photo editor, what struck me the most about his work was the incredible connection. And if you've seen the exhibition, you can see the connection that he has with the people he's photographing. That's not something that's easy to achieve. It's in the faces of all the people he shot. The images feel very true and open, and like they are giving you something unique about that person, and you immediately get who that person is. It's an amazing skill. You were able to get up close and tell the story of some of the most influential artists, athletes, politicians, actors, and cultural influencers of the time. And as a leading photojournalist, you covered war, you covered protests, the funeral of JFK, and many other events. So this is a real honor to be sitting here with you today.
Thank you very much.
So I thought it would be great, because I would talk about the photography part all day long, but I wanted to talk to you about everything that happened that led up to you eventually having a career in photography. Let's start back when you were 6 years old and things were changing in Paris and anti-Semitism was on the rise. What was it like at that time? And as a young boy, what did you realize about what was going on? How aware were you?
Well, when I was 6 years old, I don't think I realized what was happening. Mm-hmm. But in retrospect, I was born in 1933, and this is when Hitler released Mein Kampf, where he was writing about what he planned to do, and everybody laughed and did not pay attention, which is a situation that is getting renewed as we speak in certain countries. Yeah. It's very scary. So that's what I know about it. I was 6 years old. I was just a little kid and enjoying an ice cream and living with my parents in the Montmartre neighborhood in Paris. And I guess at 6 years old, I may have been going to school.
And then your father received the summons to go to City Hall.
Yes, in 1941. As I said earlier, during the tour, my father received something from City Hall, a green ticket, it was called, billet vert in French. And he wanted to go to City Hall, and he thought it was a nothing registration, and my mother was trying to dissuade him to go, but he did go. And they kept him, and he got arrested and interned at a camp. I don't know if you could call it a concentration camp, but it was in Pithiviers, which is probably 40 miles from Paris, something like that, maybe a little more. And I remember visiting him in 1941. So let's see, I was 33. I must have been 7, 8 years old.
Wow.
So we went to visit, and it turned out that we met my father at the sugar factory where he was working during his internment, based on research from the person in Limay, which is the town I was hiding 42 to 44. And I did not know at the time. My mother suggested that he should escape. The camp was manned by the French police. It was easier to escape. But he said, don't worry. They will release me as an ancien combattant, which means he's a veteran of the army. He was a volunteer in the French army. And he got demobilized when the German invaded France. So he said he was on the list to be released. So there was no fear that he would go any further.
He trusted the system.
He trusted the system, which was a big mistake, because the Germans did not wait for the French government to release him. They started to deport them in railroad cars that were reserved for cattle. So there was no water. I mean, I can see the horror of being deported like this. So it turns out, with the knowledge that I have now, that he was going to Auschwitz. My mother never knew where he was going because nobody told us anything.
How challenging was it for you and your mother once he was gone to sustain your life in Paris?
It became very difficult because they decreed that all Jews should wear a yellow star when you're walking in the street. I had no idea what it meant. And we did sometimes we did not. I continued to go to school, but things became too difficult in Paris, and my mother took me to this couple in Limay, which is also about 40, 45 miles from Paris. My parents used to rent a house for the summer, and they accepted to take me in and registered me at the local school. And I started to go to school, and my mother was hiding on the other side of the Seine River. And I saw her once in 2 years.
Wow.
Because we could not be seen together, to not raise suspicion as to whereabouts. And I did not know that we were a few miles from General Rommel's headquarters. So we were getting bombed every night. If it was not the German, it was the Allies. So we would go in the back of the garden. There was a shelter that Mr. Morin had dug up in the garden. So we would go and hide in the garden.
So did you just feel like you were under constant,
Yes.
constant danger?
Of course, we were in danger. If they had been uncovered, they would have been shot and take me as well. As a matter of fact, I read just 2 days ago, it shows you that my story is one of millions.
Right.
I just met a lady, maybe in the audience now, who told me she was born the same year. She's an older woman. She was born 3 months after me. And she told me a similar story, that they were able to escape the Veldiv roundup, where they had buses, and based on the Lime archivist papers that she dug up, I see that they arrested thousands of Jews in Paris that day. They had buses. I read all the plans that the chief of police had written for his troops, and it is cold-blooded, horrible documents. And at that time, the French police became more royalist than the king, because the Nazis said, do not take the children. We have no use of the children. Take only the adults. The chief of police in Paris said, no, take everybody, because they didn't want to deal with the children left over. So they took everybody. So my mother had installed 2 locks on our door, on our apartment door. And this is what saved us. It as little as that. They tried to break down the door at our apartment early in the morning. And they tried all morning. And to show you the mood that is set by war, the neighbors who were interested in getting our apartment helped them by lending them an axe.
Oh my
so
God.
they could take the down door faster. So, but still, the door was made of metal. I just discovered this when we were shooting the film 2 years ago, that the door is metal, so they could not take the door down. They were trying to break the side of the door to bring the door up, but they couldn't. But then I got hungry, and I was a small child, and it was 1942, I think. Yeah, July 1942, July 15. I'll tell you why I remember the date, July 15. I just read a couple days ago in the New York Times and on CNN that a young girl was shot on July 15 in Poland.
Recently, July 15?
I read it 2 days ago.
Oh my God.
She kept a diary, and in her diary, she expresses her will to continue to live. And on July 15, a few days later, she was arrested and shot dead in Poland, because they were treating the Jews in Poland, Hungary, and Eastern Europe a lot tougher than France, Belgium, and Italy.
Well, you previously hadn't really spoken about your story or talked
That is
about
true.
it.
That is true, yes.
Is that why you feel like it's more important to tell your story now than ever?
Well, it turned out this way, yes. Unfortunately, it turned out this way. Because originally, my granddaughter, Nicole, went to Yad Vashem in Jerusalem. She just happened to be there on a trip to Israel. Before they get 25, they get a free trip. Yeah, a birthright, yes. And so she went, and at Yad Vashem, she saw my name. And she was surprised, and she asked to see the video that I had done for Steven Spielberg, who interviewed 1,000 people like me, survivors. And lo and behold, the record was there, and she saw the video, and she called me to tell me, why didn't you not tell us? I said, because it is not a story that I wanted to tell you. I have other things to tell you. And I never told my children because I did not want to burden them, as millions of other Jews have done, because it's such a burden to tell them about what took place. Those events are horrific,
Right.
that to talk about it is not only painful, but it's going to burden them in their lives. And I think I did the right thing, because
Yeah.
my children are very successful, and I'm glad I did not speak. And Nicole convinced me to speak up, and she said, I'm going to do something, I want to do a film, because I think you have a lot to tell. So she convinced me. After a while, I said, okay, I'll do it. But I was not so convinced to do this film, because it is so painful to discuss this dark past.
Right.
And in a way, I'm glad she convinced me, because as we speak, the situation in the world is catastrophic,
Very grim.
because everything is beginning again. And I never thought I would see this ever in my lifetime, where you have countries like Hungary, Italy, Germany even, manifesting themselves in a way that is very, very dangerous. And we should all be wary of the events and not let it happen again. It takes very little to begin those hatred, to expand
Right.
into something else.
You've talked before about things like the lock, little things that made pivotal changes in your life, and looking out for those little things. You had another experience like that where something changed your life when you were in LeMay, when the planes were going over. Can you talk about that?
Yes. Yeah, one day I'm walking in the garden with a black cat, my cat, named Pompon, and just taking like an everyday walk in the back garden. There's a lot of vegetable growing and asparagus as tall as me. All of a sudden, a German Messerschmitt flies on the roof line of the house from the other side of the river, where they had just bombed a factory. And he starts shooting at us. And I could see the pilot, he was so low. And all of a sudden I have blood in my hand. The cat got some bullets, and I escaped with no wounds of any kind. I escaped that shooting, but the cat was dead in my hands, in my arms. So this is one instance where war is totally stupid. Minimalist event take place, and you think they're not important, and they affect the rest of your life. So this is
Like
the
a
horrors
second-
of war.
A second lock on the door changed everything.
Second lock, yes. So life holds on by a thread sometimes.
Then, after the war, you and your mother are reunited, and you've moved back to Paris. Talk about what was it like to be back together, and presumably about to experience a period of hopefully normalcy as much as possible.
Yes, my father had not come back, and he went at that time to a destination unknown. We came back and reunited. We took our apartment back. We were able to get it legally. So we returned to normal life. I went back to school. And then within a year and a half, my mother had a stomachache. She went across the street to the pharmacist and bought some bicarbonate. And the next day, she was very sick. I remember coming back from the school, I saw an ambulance in front of our door, and for some reason, a light came in my head. Oh my God, something happened to my mother. And it was exactly that. She was taken to the hospital and died 2-3 days later. The pharmacist had sold her tainted powder. It was rat poison. and she passed away in 1946. I was 13 years old.
What happened to the pharmacist? Was he?
He got arrested, and there was a trial, and they released him, you know. I mean, I wanted to kill this guy.
I bet.
Yeah, and unfortunately, he got released, and the pharmacy still exists. It's not the same proprietor, but it's still there. And 9 people in the neighborhood died because of this until the doctors found out what it was, that the pharmacist had sold tainted powder. So that's what I'm saying. There is ramification to the war.
Right.
It's like a domino effect. It starts here, you don't know where it's going to end. And these are the horrors of war. It continues to happen after the fact.
So probably buying something like that because on the black market because there are shortages in provisions.
Of course. This
after
is
the
right
war.
after World War II.
Yeah.
Paris was a very dark and gray city because there was shortage of everything.
Wow.
It was a very difficult time, even after the war. And keep in mind that from the first time that I saw an American truck coming down the hill in Normandy in 1944, I'm walking on the street, some little highway of some kind, and I see a khaki truck with a big black guy, and that was the Americans landing. Unbeknownst to me, there were thousands of other trucks coming from the beach. But it took them another year to end the war. Wow. And a lot of people got killed further. It didn't happen just automatically. I mean, so many kids, you know, they were 20 years old, the soldiers, were getting killed while I was watching the truck come down the road. But that was the beginning of France's liberation.
So you now basically are orphaned at that point.
Yes.
And you went to live with family for a while, but that didn't last.
No. I became a ward of the state, and they put me in orphan homes, which I disliked a lot. So my first goal was to get out of there.
Escape.
Yes, escape, exactly.
But is that where you first learned about photography?
Yes, I was taking pictures as a child of all the other children in the home. I was near Versailles, which is a suburb, kind of a suburb of Paris. At that time, it seems like it was much further out of Paris. In Jouy-en-Josas, that was the first orphan home. And it was a nice house, but most of the kids who were there eventually ended up in Israel. It was really the point of this home. So then I got transferred to another house in Courbevoie, and that's where I got my first job in a amateur lab to process film, amateur stuff. And I learned how to print and stuff like that. And
Best way to learn.
yeah, 15, 16 years old, you know.
At the same time, you were developing a real love for film and the cinema, and that was an escape for you, right? How did your love of film and your in the intersection of photography, how did that happen?
Well, both films and photography was the escape route. Yeah. I saw American films, such as Lauren Hardy films, the Marx Brothers, Ziegfeld Folly, and film noir. I love the lighting, you know, shot against dark backgrounds and backlit and stuff.
Did you ever think that one day you would photograph Groucho Marx holding a coconut in the grocery store?
Well, not specifically Groucho Marx, but I had a mind of getting all the people that I enjoy seeing on the screen and photograph them. That was my dream. And it's unbelievable that it did become true.
And how many you probably actually did photograph?
Yes, but I must tell you, when I came in the United States on December 14, 1950, on a very cold icy day in New York. And I can tell you that when I saw from the boat the pier and the West Side Highway in New York, it was not as appealing as what I saw in the Esther Williams movie.
Because you could actually see it and smell it at that point, right?
Different, yes. So I said, oh my God, what did I do? Come in the United States? Wow.
It had to feel like walking into a film set, though, in some ways.
Well, New York is a big film set.
Yeah.
That's why I enjoyed taking pictures of it a lot. New York was headquarters for me, so I took pictures of New York from all sides and all aspects of New York. I did stories on the city itself. And then I went further because I did stories on San Francisco and then Washington, D.C. and many others. And European magazines were eating it up. Everybody wanted to know what is the United States. They saw the same movies I did, so they wanted to see. I showed it to them. And like on New York, an Italian magazine, illustrated magazine, Epoca, which is a little bit like Life magazine, they did 2 issues, covers and 16-page each issue, so it was huge. Everybody enjoyed watching the United States because Europe was pretty bad. Everybody was trying to escape and see something else.
And America was one big escape.
That's right, it was a big dream.
Yeah.
So little by little, I climbed my stair to paradise and I made it. And I ended up taking pictures of all the people that were of interest to me.
Now, when you first came to America, how much English did you speak? Was there
Very little.
Very little.
I learned it in school, but I was not very fluent in speaking it, so it was very difficult. I went to night school in the Bronx to learn English.
You know, it was hard. It's hard now to break into photojournalism. It was hard then. How did what you'd experienced in your life prepare you for what you had to do to become a working photojournalist? Because I know you had to be self-reliant and very scrappy and aggressive and really pound the pavement. How did what you had experienced in your life kind of prepare you for that life of a photojournalist?
Well, the hard times that I had lived in and what I had went through hardened me. I was a man before my age. You know, I never had a childhood,
Right.
very much to speak of. So it made me tough-skinned, living by myself and survive. So that's what I did. And I did the best I could to get out of poverty, and my eyes were my only weapon. So I used those weapons to get up in the world and look up.
What was it like when you saw your first photograph in a Life magazine or on a cover?
Forget Life magazine, that came later. I was working for a French newspaper called France Amérique. I was always thrilled to see the pictures reproduced, no matter in what.
No matter where they went.
It didn't matter much.
It must still be a thrill to see your photographs somewhere like here.
Of course, every time I see them, as a matter of fact, I was very, very shocked in 2014, excuse me for a minute. Okay.
Just making sure how we are on time, because I can't see. Sorry. Okay, 15 minutes? We could clearly talk forever.
Yeah, well, let me continue on this train of thought. Where was I?
French newspaper,
Yes,
getting your pictures printed.
Yeah. Of course, every time, no, I was talking about 2014.
Oh.
2014 is the first time that I did a show where the pictures were on the wall and not on the printed page. And we had a show in Paris at the Palais d'Iéna, which is a big government building, which my good friend Vincent Montana built a set there. He had permission from all the government heads, and it's an incredible building. and they built a huge scenography to hang the picture. It was wonderful. The show was 230 prints,
Wow.
which is big.
That's huge.
Yes, and it was done on a very large scale. And the surprise of this show to me was I saw many people. We had big attendance there because it was well publicized. And I saw people coming out of the show with tears in their eyes, crying.
Yeah.
They had relived some of their own life in my photograph. I said, oh my God, my pictures are still alive. I thought they were dead. You know, once you finish with Life magazine and all the others,
Yeah.
it's finished, you know, because it's a news event. But let me just
Okay.
finish that sentence so I can tell you where I was leading to. Unbeknownst to me, I had covered sequences of stories which told the story of the United States
Yeah.
in the second part of the 20th century, but not by design, just because it just happened.
Right.
That I did so many stories one after the other. I was extremely active, and take all my subjects are people of interest to me, and events were assigned by people like Life magazine or Look or Saturday Evening Post, the three big picture magazine at the time. I came at the tail of the golden times for photojournalism. You asked me before about today to begin in photojournalism. I think it's tougher. There's no photojournalism anymore.
Right.
A few newspapers have photographers, but you know, it's insignificant. They don't communicate to millions of people. When we were doing a story in those days, we had 8.5 million magazines going out.
Wow.
That's a big readership. If you multiply by 2 or 3, many people saw the magazine in doctor's office, I mean, everywhere. So the magazines were all over. And those don't exist anymore. So as photojournalists, even if you're trained by it,
Right.
you have no stage in which to perform. The only stage we're left is you and I talking on the stage.
In that room over there.
In the room, yes.
But you did cover so many defining moments and people who people revered and looked up to and learned from and were inspired by. One that strikes me is you also had unprecedented access. Today, photographers would never have the access to celebrities, politicians, or athletes that you had at the time. I mean, even the Kennedys, I mean, you photographed them multiple times. The picture of Jackie that's in the exhibition, when you look at that, you were able to, in a huge sea of people, get this moment where her face is so glowing and you just feel the promise of what it could have been in that one moment of her face.
Exactly.
And then that defining moment of the funeral and her tragic beauty and pride. What was it like to cover a story from hope to what actually happened?
Tragedy. Yeah. But it's an interesting point you bring up, because the United States went through some very tough events ever since the 50s, and the change is incredibly fast. And even as a photojournalist, I had a hard time keeping up with it,
Yeah.
because I couldn't be everywhere. I mean, you know, the civil rights was breaking all over, so one person cannot handle the whole thing. But I was lucky to pick certain things that were meaningful at the time and of interest to me. And I looked at it from my own eyes, so they were different. You know, this is how I started to work for Life magazine. I was first working as a one-man agency myself, shooting during the day and printing all night, and send it to various countries, France, Italy, Germany. And Life saw that some little guy from France was beating
Their guys.
their teams. They had huge teams. Life had money to spend in those
yeah.
days. So they had very large means to cover a story. But nobody was covering a story like I was covering a story. Because I did it from my point of view.
Right.
Now, mind you, they don't always get reproduced in the magazine, because after I'm done, the editors can edit and slant the story to what they see in the story, which is not always what I saw.
Right.
So you always constantly have this kind of a battle.
Well, you have a real knack for taking the unexpected photograph. I mean, the perfect example is the boxing match photo. It's not in here, but it's of Elizabeth Taylor watching was it Ali?
No, it was Johansson Patterson.
She's watching this, and you photographed the combatants, but the most compelling photograph you had was the ones of her actually watching the event happen, and her like...
Yeah, my old coverage was Elizabeth Taylor and Eddie Fisher at the fight. And then when I heard some noise on the ring, I turned around and took a couple shots of the KO. I was lucky. I just turned around and the guy was knocking him off. So the magazine ran a double page of the knockout, and the rest of the pages were Elizabeth screaming, and she never saw. I was right in front of her, but she never saw me. I was like a fly in the wall, which is how I worked. Sometimes I'm a fly in the wall, and sometimes I'm very invasive. And I explained to you before in the tour that to get some reaction of Federico Fellini, the Italian film director, I moved his nose a little bit so that I get some reaction, and I did. So it all depends. Each situation is different. You try to capture the meaningful moment
Right.
with the people that I'm working with.
Something true about them.
Right. The more I get to know them and they get to know me, the more trust is established, and we are able to show what this person is like. Now, you insinuated before that how was I able to approach all these people?
Mm-hmm.
Today, it would be impossible,
Exactly.
because all the personalities, whatever personalities they are surrounded by publicity people, and they protect them, and they say, "Oh, we'll give you so and so if you guarantee us the cover." That is no way to practice photojournalism.
Right.
We first have to see if they deserve the cover. So that doesn't mean because somebody has big boobs or nice legs or whatever, that they should be on the cover of a magazine, right? It depends what they're doing.
Depends on what magazine it is, too,
That's right. Today, there are no magazines that do photojournalism, period. So if somebody wants to get into photojournalism, they better get into television, and it's not as personal
Right.
as photojournalism, because most of the big stories I did for Life were my ideas. That's when I was most successful.
When you were pitching them
My point of view.
stories.
My point of view. I can give you one example if we have time. Yeah.
Do we have time?
Life wanted to do a story on anonymity, the struggle to be an individual. It's a very abstract kind of theme. And they had 10 photographers around the table with the managing editor at the time, George Hunt, at Life. And we were discussing ideas on what to do to illustrate the subject. I mean, people like Gordon Parks, Alfred Eisenstadt, name them, they were there. So, and little me as well.
That's the dream team for
Yep,
me.
yep, exactly. And then everybody went out and shot their own point of view. I got lucky again. Maybe it's not so much luck, but I got the cover and maybe a couple spreads. My cover was totally created. So this is created photojournalism. You know, some people will say, oh, this is not the decisive moment. But yes, it is, because I am telling a story so the public will understand better what we're talking about. And let me tell you what the cover was like. It was 3 different photographs that I layered together. And one was the background was a glass office building on Park Avenue. And in the studio, I photographed models, silhouette of them going in different directions. And then I manufactured a big neon gizmo with 2 big arrows. One was green, one was red. And I combined all of this together to show that some people were going in the wrong direction, some people were going in the right direction, and some people were hopeless. So that was the cover. But
was that the first composited cover that they ran?
I don't know.
Probably.
Possibly, yeah. But it told the story in one picture.
Well, your Marcel Marceau image is another one that is just so genius, because he was a very famous mime.
Yes.
That it was on Ed Sullivan all the time, I remember as a child. But that photograph is so brilliant, to have him balancing on the line as if he's balancing on a tightrope. That was not just a photograph, that was an idea.
Well, when you're working with brilliant people, whether it's Marcel Marceau, Marilyn Monroe, whoever it is, or John F. Kennedy, if you have a relationship with them, creative ideas come by the hundreds. And I saw him doing the balancing act on the stage. And even though he's on the stage such as this, it looks like he's on a rope. I said, Marcel, let's go to the streets of New York and do the same thing.
And he got it immediately.
Immediately, because we had an understanding. We became friends, you know. I had communication with Marcel Marceau till the rest of his life, you know. We became friends.
Not many people talked with him, I would imagine.
You know, it's a very good point. He never talks on stage. Yeah, of course. And
so I have one last question, and then we'll move on to take some Q. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to finish with Marcel Marceau. There was another guy that I photographed like this who never speaks on screen, Harpo Marx.
Yeah.
But when I met him, he couldn't stop talking.
That's so genius. You know, having heard your story and everything that you experienced, the thing that struck me about you when I first met you, and when I saw the documentary, which is amazing, you're such an optimist. You laugh all the time. You are delightful and charming. I have a crush on you, I gotta say. But, you know, how did you, after everything you went through, how did you become the optimistic person that you are now?
Well, I think it's a survival instinct. You know, as I told you, I had basically no childhood. So you become optimistic, you have to survive. So you could go on for another day. And forget the pain. It's better to laugh than to cry, anytime. And the story I'm telling now, it still chokes me when I speak about it.
Right.
So, you know, I did it for the film, and it revived some old wounds. And for the first time, I was able to mourn my father. We didn't know if he died or where he died or anything. Imagine, he was arrested when he was 42 years old, I believe.
Wow.
He had no life. My mother passed away. She wasn't.
And never knew what happened to him.
Never knew what happened. She was 46. So my parents didn't have much of a life. How can you remain into those depths of sorrow You have to come out of it and be optimistic. I'm always optimistic that tomorrow will bring a better life, a better picture. And all the pictures that I took are my babies. You know,
that you've released out into the world.
that's
Yeah.
why I fought for the right of owning those pictures.
Right.
It was a very difficult fight. In those days, magazine, because they had Marshall McLuhan, the media maven, advising them that intellectual property would be eventually become very important. And it did. If I had not kept my photographs and given them away every time I had an assignment from a magazine, I could not make a living today. No matter how skimpy a living we make these days, because there is no photojournalism.
Right.
It's dead. So, but there are other fields for a photographer to excel, and that's personal communication.
Right.
I mean, some of them do it very well, but everybody takes pictures nowadays. But where will those pictures be 50, 75, 100 years from now?
Right.
You know, it remains to be seen how the world of digital will survive.
Well, I have a feeling that your photographs 75, 100 years from now are still going to be treasured.
Well, the physical film will survive, yes.
Thank you so much. It is so incredible
My pleasure.
to hear your story.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we would love to take some questions. Henri would.
It's hard to see.
Yeah.
Can you put the house light for questions so I can see who I'm talking to?
I think there's a mic coming around too. We'll take yours first.
Yeah, here we go.
What role did religion play up in your life when you were a young child
What is
with
it?
your family? What role did religion, if any, play in your family's life when you were a young, growing up in France?
What role did religion play in your family's life when you were growing up in France?
None, because we were hiding. I didn't know what it means to be a Jew, since I got caught in the war when I was 6 years old. So I was never able to lead a normal life. I knew we were Jews, but that's about it. We could not even talk about it. If you happen to speak in front of other people, you might get arrested right away. So this is what war does. You cannot be yourself. Yeah, I was hiding. So that's how I was raised. No bar mitzvah, no nothing, because there was no time to do anything else but survive.
Which one of your photographs is your favorite?
Who's talking?
The gentleman there, which one of your photographs is your favorite?
The last one.
When you got here, you didn't speak English. And here I am, right here.
Right there.
When you got here, you didn't speak English. You were about 18 years old. How did you get started to make an income, to sell your pictures? I mean, you were very young. How did you get started with your photography?
Well, I said before that I was a man way before in my childhood.
Yeah.
I did not have a childhood.
Right.
I wanted to get out of the orphanage. And I started to work for this as an
Right.
apprentice in that amateur shop processing film. One thing led to another. I became an assistant to a fashion photographer and another photojournalist. Little by little, I picked up all the
No,
stuff
I understood that,
needed
but coming
know.
to America, but did you have jobs when you came to America?
Do I have to answer?
Did you have jobs ready, waiting for you when you came to America?
Of course not. No,
So how
no
did-
job. I came empty-pocketed with one camera. You can see a camera in the exhibition, an Argoflex. I came with that camera and very little else, very little money in my pocket. So I immediately worked for an underwear company, packing women's underwear for 3 months, just to get some cash.
was just thinking about Eisenstadt and Ansel Adams and people that I've been a photographer since I'm 5 years old, so many, many, many years. And today, I actually stopped entering shows because everybody, and even outdoor shows, everyone walks around with their cell phones, nobody stops them, and nobody buys a picture anymore. And that became very expensive to, number one, enter the show, and then number two, to put it all together.
The pictures are expensive?
Or is she saying entering shows that people are not buying?
They're only
pictures
taking
anymore?
photographs with their cell phones.
Everybody's taking the pictures, but you can't do anything with them.
No, yeah, that is not right.
I know.
Because that, to my surprise, when I did the first show in 2014 in Paris, I told you, how people reacted to the photographs, and they wanted to buy to have some prints at home, as what they had seen on the wall. So this is a new career for me. I'm in it since 2014. I was never interested in talking about collectors, about prints. My goal was always to get photographs published in a magazine.
Well, you're lucky that nobody's taking pictures so that they're
now-
not buying it.
I'm in a different business. Now I work the collection, and we do shows. I've done the film, and we sell prints. As a matter of fact, right here in front of you, you have Mary Karnofsky of the KP Project Gallery in Los Angeles, which did a show of my work this year and last. And anybody who wants to buy a print, you can buy it through Mary. It is Mary. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Does anyone else have a question? Any other questions?
But it is very surprising to answer your question. People are interested in these photographs. There are millions of people taking pictures with iPhone, but what meaning do they have? The photograph that I took represent events in everybody's life. Anybody who is old enough to have lived in the 20th century, what you see on the wall is my witnessing all these events and reporting to everybody what took place.
So we have a question here.
Yeah, your camera gave you your life. I wanted to know, where did you get the camera? Was that from your father, or who gave you your camera?
Your cameras gave you your life. Where did you get your first camera?
I told you the first camera was in Paris, the Argoflex, twin lens reflex that I purchased with whatever.
Oh, you purchased it yourself, it wasn't a gift?
Yeah, of course,
It was just
yeah.
like,
Do you still have that camera?
No. But eventually, when I came here, I was able to earn enough money to buy Leicas, Nikons, and I did that first big story for the New York Times of, actually it was not for them, I just did it on my own. And then they saw it and they wanted to buy it. A picture of New York looking up, the camera was on the floor with a wide angle lens, and it was nice and graphic photographs of New York, seen from a different point of view. So that's it. I bought more and more cameras. Sometimes they were custom-made cameras.
I'm glad you could afford it. It was wonderful.
What was that?
Anybody over here?
Oh, she's glad you could afford it.
I think he had his hand up first.
Eventually, I was able to, yes.
I think there's another one.
Well,
She's taking the mic over here.
okay.
Thank you. This is wonderful hearing you speak and seeing your work.
Thank you.
I have two quick questions. Obviously, your pictures depict celebrities and well-known figures, and it's partly a celebration of life. And what are your thoughts about photography as a tool to promote social change? And is it that perhaps your experiences in childhood drew you with your focus on hope and humanity towards these celebrities, and perhaps not to depict some of the ills of society? That's question one. The second question, just a few words about digital photography. Do you think that in your era that it required more skill than what we're seeing now with folks who have all the tools of the digital era?
Yeah. Well, the skills have not changed. Whether one shoots digital or film or anything else that's coming over, who knows what's going to be in a few years. And it's how you handle your coverage, your point of view, and your eye. This is what makes the difference, not the camera. There's no change whatsoever from that point of view between film and digital. A lot of people are taking millions of pictures, and most of the time they never print them, so you never see them again. The pictures that I take represent slices of life, and we are trying to tell a story, not always easy to tell the truth, but to show people and witness to our time, where we live and what we should be thinking about. Like we did stories for life that are very difficult to illustrate. What was the problem with 50% rate of divorce in this country? Youth unemployment. How do you illustrate all this stuff? That's what I did. And it doesn't matter what camera I use. If my eyes could blink with a piece of film in the back of my head, it would work just as well. Okay.
One more here.
Yes.
Did you use flash photography? Did you use flash bulbs? Or timed exposure?
I used everything that's known to man. Flash. Sometime I would work in a big ballroom, like in the case of Mayor Lindsay, who got elected mayor in those days. And I had flash units around the ballroom, so I could shoot as if I am shooting available light. And for the first time, I devised a thing that we could flash those lights radio controlled. So I just had a little camera, nothing else. Nobody could see my flashes. They're all over the balcony. And I could control it with my little radio. So we initiated new technology to do different things. And the Lindsay win as mayor of the city, he became a national news. And they ran 2 covers on Lindsay. Why? Because they were different. Everybody was, the film was very slow in those days. They didn't get the quality that is necessary for a cover. I did, because I had worked very hard already for hours when the ballroom was empty with my assistant, set up lights in advance. So on a news event, the one thing we could control is the lighting. So it created good quality. Therefore, I got the cover. So it depends on the story. And sometimes you shoot in the dark. I said before, as a fly in the wall, I'm not there. Nobody knows I'm there. So it depends on the story.
Henri, you are a treasure. I'm sure it's Robin.
Oh, Robin, how are you?
How are you? I am positive that everyone here will agree this has been an amazing experience. I saw your movie, met your granddaughter. I encourage everyone to see the movie. But at the end of the day, how do you want us to tell the story to generations ahead about this famous artist, photographer we have had the honor of meeting? For we all know, as we look back on famous photographers, we all are very excited to see their work. What would you like us to repeat to future generations about you?
It's interesting that you bring this up, because, yes, I did take some significant pictures which affect our lives. But the biggest achievement that I consider big is that I came along in 1950, empty-pocketed. And in 2014, at the dinner after the opening of the show, there were 35 family members there. So I had created I had created a new family at the same time that I was creating graphic illustration work for magazine. So both are very significant. And it's important, I think, to discuss my trajectory because, as I said earlier, I am one of millions of stories. But to remember not to let demagogues spread stories about discrimination, hatred, and all the stuff that we're witnessing again today. It's important to stop it. And you can go to the ballot box and vote for the right people so that we get some changes. But I don't know how to affect Europe. Europe is on a very dangerous path right now with too many immigrants from various countries, including Africa, where they don't know, they're taking all the wrong decisions. And as I said earlier, we have dangerous countries like Hungary, Poland, Germany, that are on the dangerous list. What do? You got to speak up. That's all you can do. Speak up and make sure that it never happens again.